Hello, my name's Kathy Bissell. Welcome to the Golf Show 2.0. This week, our guest is Rob Zaleski, who has a book he's written. Well, actually, he's written more than one book, but this particular one happens to have an angle to golf. And he's somebody that Gary has known for a number of years. So, Gary, why don't you get us more in depth
Well,
on
yeah,
Rob?
Rob Zaleski, longtime sports writer in Madison at the Capital Times. He's written a couple of books, but the most interesting one is sort of a golf book. And unlike any other golf book, it's called Searching for Sal. And I'm going to let Rob explain the premise of this, but it's about some golfers and they have a bet and things get a little unusual. But Rob, tell us the premise of this book, which is it's not a new book. It's been out a while, but I don't think it was ever on the shelf in Barnes and Noble. Tell us about the book.
Well, it does revolve around the big question that everyone has, and I mean everyone, especially when you get to be a old codger like myself. When we get together with friends. My wife and I, Cindy, have been married 55 years, and this question comes up all the time, and that is, what happens to us after we die? Um, where did the idea come from? Well, I'll get into that shortly, but here's the premise. I'm just going to read briefly from the back of the book, which summarizes the plot. Sal Magestro and Nate Zaverill are the best of friends, but they argue incessantly about religion and the plausibility of life after death. A staunch Catholic and the gregarious owner of a pizzeria in Madison, Wisconsin, Sal is so convinced deceased humans can influence the lives of loved ones they left behind that he concocts a scheme to prove once and for all the existence of a hereafter. Nate, a school teacher and unabashed agnostic, finds the idea pure folly. Nonetheless, he signs an oath that stipulates how Sal will signal Nate, or vice versa, upon his death. Several years later, Sal dies unexpectedly, and shortly after, Nate and three golf buddies witness a shocking, seemingly supernatural phenomenon that they agree might be Sal's signal. A light-hearted but compelling and thought-provoking tale, Searching for Sal, will captivate and challenge believers and non-believers alike.
Well, and the bet was the agreement was if one of them dies, the next time their usual foursome goes out to play, or the other three guys on the first, go to their favorite course on the first par three in their favorite course. The person who is deceased will help the guy who's there make a hole in one, no matter where he hits it. And that's
That's
exactly what happens. The guy hits a terrible shot, and it's in the cup. And the book is about what happens. What happens after that?
Yeah, Nate has to decide whether he goes forward promoting what happened. He had promised Sal that he would do that if the impossible ever happened, and it did. And Nate is a school teacher. He's a former journalist, and he's agnostic. And he knows, being a former journalist, that if he goes public with this, that he and Sal had actually signed an agreement that was witnessed by their golf buddies, it would turn into a media frenzy. Even back then, this
Oh yeah,
takes
I mean
place in about
this was before social media became the monster that it is now.
right. But even then, as I note in the book, I used to work for United Press International. Most people aren't aware of how the process works or worked even back then. That United Press International and the Associated Press would pick up uh, interesting local news stories, and if they caught fire, they would send it, in newspapers nationwide and TV stations would pick up the story. And
Right.
so Nate is aware that this could happen and it's going to change his life forever. And he doesn't know if he wants to do this. He talks with all kinds of people and from all walks of life, his wife, and he does not want to pursue this, but he had an agreement with Sal and he agreed to do this. So it takes off from there.
being the stand-up guy that he is, he can't go back on his word, right?
He can't go back on his word, and
It leads to TV. It leads to TV appearances and global news and all kinds of stuff he wasn't prepared for.
That's right. And it gets crazier as the media frenzy explodes.
Where did you come up with this idea for a book?
Well, the idea came, believe it or not, this is very odd, but my wife and I were in Panama in 1997 visiting my brother, who's a Vietnam vet. And we were on a catamaran going through the Panama Canal. And I was probably on my fourth or fifth pina colada. And all of a sudden, we had just visited a place called the San Blas Islands. If you ever go down to Panama, I highly recommend it. It's been discovered now, but it's where the Kuna Indians live. And it is heaven on earth. Most beautiful place, relaxing place that you're ever going to find. And we got into, my brother and I and my wife and a friend who had come along, we got into this spirited debate about life after death. Is there really a heaven and hell? And that got things going. And so I turned to Cindy, my wife, and I said, could you see if there's there are probably about 20 people on the catamaran as we're going through the Panama Canal. And I said, could you get me a notebook? I've got some ideas for a novel that's coming to me. And I actually wrote the outline for the whole book in about 45 minutes.
Wow.
During your traversing the Panama Canal?
That's right. And
even after 5 pina coladas, your notes were coherent.
Oh, it just, and we were laughing our heads off. We just coming up with one crazy thing after another. But I had always been intrigued, like most people. I mean, as I mentioned in the book, from the time we're about 6 or 7 years old, we find out all of a sudden that we don't live forever. We die. And we ask our parents, seriously? Well, what happens when we die? And of course, nobody knows. So maybe it affected me more because I had a little brother who died in a freak accident the day after his second birthday.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And it was such a crazy freak accident that it was on the front page of the Milwaukee Journal. And it was picked up by the wire services back then. That was 1954. And so I was haunted by his death for the rest of my life.
Do you feel like he ever contacted you after he died?
Maybe he sent you this story idea. I'm serious.
Yeah.
You never know. The crazy part about this is from the time I was young, I was very skeptical of organized religion. I remember reading Mark Twain and sharing the views he had. He was very skeptical of organized religion in general. The comedian Ricky Gervais has made the comment, there are something like 3,000 recognized religions in the world, I think even more than that. And Ricky Gervais has said, but your religion, the one you believe, yours is the one that's got it right, correct? And all these others are pure hokum. And that's pretty much how I felt. My wife Cindy and I are both recovering Catholics. We dropped out of the Catholic Church when we were 16 or 17 after hearing stuff that just, we'd roll our eyes and say, come on, you got to be, you're kidding. Adam and Eve, you're serious? But like Mark Twain did have a spiritual side to him. And I would say I do as well. And let me quickly tell you a story of why I still continue to have this spiritual side and why I am an agnostic and not an atheist. In 2018, right before my 70th birthday, there was a kid I mentored from McFarland, which is a suburb of Madison. And I mentored him. He was 17 years old when his journalism teacher contacted me and asked him if I could mentor the kid. His name's Don Smithmeyer. He went to the University of Wisconsin, was in a band, went to Minneapolis, started some startup businesses right in the middle of the recession in 2008, became very successful. We've remained friends through it all. He contacts me right before my 70th birthday in 2018, and he said, Rob, I remember your longtime dream was always to go to play the old course at St. Andrews. Is that still the dream? I said, well, yeah, it is, Don, except I doubt that it's going to happen at this point in my life. He said, no, it is going to happen. I'm taking you there.
Wow.
I'm taking you to Scotland for a whole week. It's my treat.
Wow. That's
And
wonderful.
we're going to play St. Andrews. And of course, I was absolutely shocked and deeply grateful. So we end up going to Scotland. We play St. Andrews. I'm a duffer. I've told this to Gary. I broke 80 twice in my life, when I was much younger. But I'll shoot in the mid 90s to 100. Anyway, we go to St. Andrews. I talked to a couple of friends who had played St. Andrews. They're much better golfers than I am. They said, be prepared to shoot like 120, especially if it's a bad day, weather-wise.
Yeah.
We get to St. Andrews, and it's windy, rainy, snow flurries, 50 degrees. And lo and behold, I can't explain it, but I went out and I played the greatest round of my life. I shot a 95, which I would be content to shoot on a course here in Madison. That included a 44 on the front nine. It was so spectacular. I just can't believe it. I think what would sum up that outing the best was my caddy, a guy named Neil, who was about the same age as I was. As we were walking off the course toward the clubhouse, Neil says to me, Rob, I got to tell you, I've been at St. Andrews for 32 years. In all that time, I've never seen a golfer of such limited ability score as well as you did today. So my friend Don Smithmeyer, who ended up shooting a 97, also a shocker. I mean, there were 112 sand traps on the course, as you know, Gary.
Yes.
And I was told to expect to be in sand traps most of the day, and I ended up in two of them.
Do you remember which ones?
It was just a most unbelievable day. But let me wrap it up just very quickly by saying this. This is where the karma comes in. Several months after I got back from St. Andrews, and I'm still on a high from this experience, and my friends are incredulous. Some still refuse to believe it. I happened to pick up Searching for Sal, and I'm paging through it. And lo and behold, the day I shot 95 at St. Andrews turns out to be the same day that Nate Zaverill hit his miracle shot in Searching for Sal, April 24th, the same day.
Wow.
And
that is incredible.
And my friends say, oh my God, if you don't believe in karma now. It does. I still contend it's probably just a wild coincidence when you think about it. But I've been golfing since I was 12 years old, and I shoot the greatest round of my life on April 24th, 2018. And it turns out that Nate Zaverill hits his miracle shot on April 24th. I mean, I don't know. What do you think of that, Gary?
Ooh.
Well, you got a 1 in 365 chance of having it be the same day. So that's not very good. That's not very good odds. It seems unlikely. Now you have had you did make a hole-in-one once. Tell us about that.
Well, actually, I made a hole-in-one on October 27th, 1990, at Odana Hills Public Golf Course in Madison. And continuing the karma here, it turns out that was the day my brother died in the freak accident in 1954.
Goodness.
If that, well, Neil, I think you're 2 for 2 there on karma. Yeah, I was just going to say, only golfers not only know what they made a hole-in-one, they remember the date, but you had a special reason for that. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to my original comment. Ooh. I think there's stuff out there that we can't explain. That's all I'll say. Whether you think it's the X-Files and aliens or something else, there's stuff we can't explain.
Well, tell us about, I mean, the whole publishing world had changed when you wrote this book. It's hard to get it in the mainstream. You got it published. Tell us how you got it published. And I'm sure, you didn't sell 10 million copies, but you got the book published and out there, and what kind of reaction did you get at the time?
Well, I contacted two publishers. Actually, this is all just a crazy story, as my friends tell me all the time. After I wrote the outline of the book in 1997, it took me more than 10 years to write the actual novel.
Oh.
I was still working as a news columnist at the Capital Times, and I would go back to the
slightly
book.
busy, so you not like you have free time to write a book.
Right. And I would come back to it all the time. And finally, I was downsized out of my job at the Capital Times in 2008. Was shocked to find that I couldn't find another job after that. Newspaper industry was in decline.
Yeah.
I met with a very well-known author in Madison. His name's Jerry Apps. He's a legendary writer from northern Wisconsin. He taught journalism at the University of Wisconsin, and I met with him and I told him, this was in 2010. I said, Jerry, I've got about 3/4 of the book done on my novel, and I keep coming back to it, and I'm wondering, should I just give up at this point? He pointed out to me that he said he had read that about 70% of people who start a novel never finish it.
Yeah.
And he leaned over the table. We were at Panera here in Madison, and he said, Rob, he pounded the table and he said, just finish the darn book.
Yeah.
So I went home and I told my wife, Cindy, wow, Jerry Apps just laid it out. So in the next 3 months, I finished it. I contacted a couple publishers. 2 of them were interested, but the publishing process was so long even then that I just said, screw it. I'm going to publish it on Amazon and just see what happens.
Okay. Gotcha.
So I actually contacted a woman who's a very successful writer who became a bestseller on Amazon. She lives in Hartland, Wisconsin. And so I published the book, and the reaction was quite favorable. I got a lot of wonderful reviews. Doug Moe, the award-winning columnist from Madison, wrote a wonderful review. Gary, you were generous in your review of the book. And then, it got a very favorable response. And then lo and behold, probably 6 months later, a woman contacts me who had moved to Madison from Los Angeles. She had been in the film industry. She had read the book, and she met me for coffee and said, this would make a great movie. We got to get this made into a movie. I had always thought from the very beginning it would make a great movie. I'm a longtime film buff. That was my intent on writing the book. I thought it would make a great movie. And then a director from Hollywood contacted me. He was interested in buying the film rights. A highly known, very successful theater group in northern Wisconsin wanted to do a theater play on it. They couldn't figure out, however, how to condense the plot.
Oh.
Over the next 6-7 years, I heard from probably half a dozen screenwriters who were thinking of buying the screen rights, but something always got in the way, or they had their own projects. And yet I wasn't about to give up, because I continue to hear from people who've read it and said, wow, this would make a great movie.
And it's unique. I mean, nobody's done, I can't think of any movie that has, the elements that this has. There's stuff there's movies about the afterlife, and some of them are comedy, some are drama, but yours is more about the quest. I think that's what makes it unique, and I think that's what would make it a good screenplay if you figure out how to do it.
Well, I appreciate that. The reactions were all over the board. I'm like my dad, being agnostic. I believe that when you're dead and buried, you're dead and buried, and that's the end of it. Or as my dad used to say, maybe you re-emerge as a worm, and you are attached to the end of a hook, and you end up being nibbled to death by bluegills. So
anything but bluegills.
What's that?
Anything but bluegills.
But I think one of one of the best reactions I got to the book was I have a friend who lives in Spring Green, just west of Madison. She's an avid book reader. She just reads novels. And she told me that she had read the book in about 2 weeks. She couldn't put it down. And then when she got to the end, it was around midnight. She was sitting in her study with a glass of wine, staring out at the stars. And it was a full moon that night. And she put the book down and she said she just stared out at the stars for about a half hour, contemplating just what the ending was about. And I will say this, I think the most common reaction I get is from people who love the fact that at the end, the reader has to decide whether they believed this was karma, or that the people who died do influence our lives when they're up there, or this was just a wild, wild coincidence.
Yeah, you can't give them a definitive answer.
Right. None of us know.
Is there a working screenplay? Have you completed one? Does somebody own the rights? Where's that stand?
Well, there's nobody working on it right now that I'm aware of. I did attempt a screenplay. I think you had mentioned to me once that you're not a screenwriter.
I've never done one, so
I told him you could be.
I wrote the screenplay with the idea that if there was a screenwriter out there who was interested, this is how I saw it as a movie. But there are so many technical details and the lighting and the music and everything else. I obviously can't handle that. I know nothing about screenwriting itself. But just to give you an example again of how this continues to stay alive, about a year ago, one of my best friends, one of the coolest, most compassionate people that I've known, died. He was a doctor. He was 54 years old. He was from Chicago. He was considered a member of our family. He was one of the first believers in Sal. He wrote the first 5-star review on Amazon, and he truly believed in the book and that it should become a movie. At the celebration of his life ceremony, all his family is there, all his friends from the Chicago area. It's packed. I was one of the speakers. I happened to bump into 2 of my friend's closest childhood buddies. Unbeknownst to me, they were in the film industry. They're highly respected in the film industry. We chatted for about 5 minutes. They found out I was a journalist. And I mentioned searching for Sal, and they were, wow, you're kidding. What's the premise? They love the premise. They love the fact that it takes place in Madison, in the State Street area. Gary, you're a UW grad. You're familiar with State Street in Madison. What a cool place it is. There's a entire chapter that takes place in the Porcupine Mountains, not national park, but state park in Upper Michigan, which I've camped there a number of times. It's stunningly beautiful.
In the UP? In the UP?
Is it in the UP?
Okay. I was going to say it sounded familiar. My mother's from the UP.
Oh, really? Oh, it's spectacular. And that's where one of the chapters would take place. So these 2 people who are highly respected filmmakers asked me to send them the manuscript. I had an updated manuscript, and I did that. They said they look forward to communicating with me in the future. I haven't heard anything since then, but they seemed extremely interested. Probably nothing's going to happen, but this is the sort of thing. I just keep hearing from people, and that's why I'm not giving up on it.
Well, it's Hollywood, and they can add some pizzazz, and it doesn't have to take place in Madison. It doesn't have to take place at Upper Peninsula. They can relocate it anywhere they want and still make it work. And maybe there's one missing element in there that would give it another bump. I don't know what that would be. Otherwise, I'd be rewritten a screenplay for you. But there's definitely the basis there, and it'd be interesting to see somebody who's a filmmaker come up with a plan. Yeah.
So I haven't given up on the idea. I'm thinking of of writing another nonfiction book. I've written 2 of them. One of them on Ed Garvey, the first executive director of the NFL Players Association. You're familiar with Ed?
Oh, yeah.
And then David Cooper, the legendary progressive Madison police chief who became an Episcopal priest. By the way, he's a character loosely based.
I didn't know he'd become a priest. I remember his name from when he was a police chief.
Yeah, he was incredibly successful. He's so admired. He's 86 now and is still as sharp mentally as he was back when he was police chief. He's a character in the book, by the way. The Reverend Mitch Crandall, who plays a key role in Searching for Sal, is based on David Cooper. When he found out about that, he told me that he went out and bought 20 copies of the book and gave them away as Christmas presents.
Yeah, why not?
But
a guy from the NFL would be interesting for people too.
Yeah, Ed Garvey was one of a kind. I often tell people I was in the newspaper business for 39 years, and I'm guessing I interviewed probably close to 10,000 people, and there were maybe 3 or 4 who stood out because they came at life from a different angle. They saw life through a different prism. Brilliant people, engaging optimists. Garvey was one and Cooper was another. Al McGuire, the coach of Marquette basketball, he was another. But here's another thing that keeps me going, Gary, and that is Norman McLean, well-known English professor at the University of Chicago, wrote the novella A River Runs Through It, which became a movie. He wrote the novella in 1976, and he was in his 70s at the time. And he tried to get it published, and he sent the manuscript out to about 30 publishers. All of them rejected it, sent 2 or 3 paragraph rejection notes, and he was outraged. The University of Chicago Press said, okay, this isn't going to work for you. We're going to publish it.
Oh, that's good.
They publish it, and it becomes a bestseller, nationwide bestseller. I think there were like 15 or 16 printings. And he was bitter that all of his original manuscripts were rejected by these publishers, but he became quite famous because of A River Runs Through It.
Sure.
And in 1980, 4 years after the novella came out, Robert Redford approached him out of the blue, called him and said, I'd like to fly to Chicago and discuss buying the screen rights. And Redford flew to Chicago, and lo and behold, they agreed to do a movie. Now, unfortunately, McLean didn't live to see he died in 1990 at age 87. The movie came out in 1992. But he at least had the satisfaction of knowing that a top name in Hollywood, the legendary Robert Redford, was going to pursue this movie, and he at least had that to keep him going and inspire him. But that's a fascinating story in itself to me.
Well, you should get a copy of your book to Robert Redford, among others. So there, start with that. Here's my idea, Rob, and I'm known for my brilliant ideas.
No.
Searching for Sal, the musical.
Oh, gosh.
Jazz hands.
Guys tap dancing in golf spikes. Yeah.
I don't know what rhymes with hole in one, but I'll think of something. For the
I
lyric.
love the idea. I love the idea. Searching for Sal the musical. Well, you never know. Like I said, this theater group, which is well known, they're from Door County, really wanted very much so to do the theater play on it, but couldn't figure out how to condense it. But they love the idea, and so these are the sorts of things. I would be obviously very excited if I could find a theater group that could pursue this, but I'm not giving up.
No golf balls.
No, it's just like when we wrote stories, and I don't know how it was at the Capital Times, but at the Milwaukee Journal, we had so many writers. We were both afternoon papers. So many writers who were good, and they would write a 25-inch or 30-inch story, and Bill Dwyer would say, you only got room for 24. And, and it's painful to edit your story and lop out 5 inches.
Right.
But when you got done, if you were honest, you could say it almost always made the story better.
Oh.
By eliminating the stuff that you liked, or there's quotes that, I was good at eliciting interesting, humorous quotes from people. And when you get those, you're just in love with the quotes and you want to get them in there. And then, but do they really advance the story? At some point you go, oh, I got to cut that. So I understand that. I feel your pain, but yeah, this inspires me to go reread Searching for Sal again, because it's been some years, and I don't know if I have any ideas, I'll send them to you. But can people still get Searching for Sal? Can they find it on Amazon?
They can. Unfortunately, Amazon, I wanted to tighten up the novel and republish it, and it's so difficult to do that on Amazon. I had 2 IT specialists and a woman who had a graphic design business, and they all tried to get it republished on Amazon, and they couldn't do it. Amazon does not help you at all. They have no people you can call.
No.
It's really, no one, they don't have a chat bot, anything. So they do have instructions on how to republish it, but everyone who's tried to do it failed. So a couple of things here that I did want to mention, though. One of them is, in the book, I mentioned the International Peace Council toward the end of the book. And a lot of people, it's a key chapter near the end of the book. And most readers who read that, who had Nate Zavrill going before the Peace Council to get their ideas on whether they thought it was a bona fide miracle. A lot of people thought I made up the Peace Council.
Oh.
And I have to tell everyone, unbeknownst to most people, there actually was an International Peace Council. And yes, it was based in Madison, Wisconsin. And
Wow.
its members included the Dalai Lama, Archbishop Tutu from South Africa. I mean, most of the top religious leaders in the world, many of them were members of the Peace Council, which was an online organization, and it existed for 9 years until they ran out of funding.
Wow.
When David Cooper became a priest, he was a member of the Peace Council. So people who read the book said, wow, that was a clever inclusion in the book, making up this Peace Council and having it exist in Madison. Well, it wasn't made up. It actually existed. They actually succeeded, the Peace Council, in having a landmine treaty passed, the Ottawa Treaty of 1997, which eliminated millions of landmines throughout Cambodia and the rest of the world. It was a very highly regarded group, and I threw it in there, and most people think it's fictitious, and it's not. So anyway.
The Adventures of Nate included meeting the Pope, did it not? It
did. And, that's probably the biggest stretch in the book. And yet, it's a lighthearted tale.
And yet if this
that was a stretch, but I wanted to throw that in there at the end, just to give a worldwide view of religion. And some people think it's like I tend to do, that it's pure hokum religions, and others, are devout followers. One of the readers who read the book, a woman who lives on the outskirts of Madison, was a devout Catholic, and I was contacted by her mother, and her mother told me that the woman loved the first 21 chapters of the book, and then when she got to the ending, it's a twist ending. I probably should note that anyone who reads the book is shocked by the ending. You think you have it all figured out, and there's a shocker at the end. Yeah. This woman got to the last chapter, and she was outraged. And her mother said she'll never speak to you again, by the way. Okay. So outraged by the end.
Well, have you considered doing a sequel? What happens to Nate
Afterwards,
in the
chapter two.
where does he go from this whole experience?
Yeah, and
That might be 5 more pina coladas, though.
that might be 5 more pina coladas, and it's probably another decade of my life, which I'm not sure I have left.
Well, you better get to it.
It's an intriguing idea. So,
Well, I want to thank you very much for sharing your experience with us and with everyone. It's a fascinating book. People get out there and read this thing because you won't believe what really happened in the book, even though it's fiction.
There's no golf book like this. There's no
Right.
other book like this. It's a novel. It's not new, but it's worth reading. It's based on golf. A hole in one. A deceased person helps his buddy make a hole in one, and it goes on from there. Searching for Sal, you can still find it on Amazon. Rob Zaleski, the unofficial mayor of Madison. Thanks for writing the book, and thanks for being with us today.
thank you, Gary, and thank you, Kathy. I really appreciate the opportunity.